Okay. Hello and welcome to Full Throttle on Unprecedented TV, brought to you from the Alliance of British Drivers. I'm Brian Gregory, Policy Director of the ABD. We've got a cracking show today because, frankly, if you're a driver in the UK now, there's no shortage of things to be angry about. Potholes that could swallow a small car, 20-mile-an-hour limits creeping across every town into the open countryside, expansions of ULEZ, EV charging chaos, and fuel prices being pushed around by events in the Middle East. War on the motorists being fought on every front.
Hello, I'm Paul Naylor, Communications Director at the ABD, and joining us today is a man who needs no introduction to anyone who's ever had a radio on. Mike Graham is one of Britain's most outspoken and fearless broadcasters, and someone who's never been afraid to say what millions of ordinary people are actually thinking. We'll be getting stuck into all of it. The roads, the restrictions, the costs, and the politicians making it worse. So strap in, this is Full Throttle. Hello, Mike.
Very good day to you. Nice to see you guys.
And you. It's an absolute privilege for me, I must admit. I'm not going to go too hero worshipping on you, Mike, but a big fan. A big fan.
Yes, likewise. I've sat many times and said, yes, that's true.
Yeah, well, there's not much good news for motorists these days, is there? I mean, every time I now drive past a petrol station, I just find myself looking to see how much they're charging. I think the highest I've seen so far is about 155.9 for petrol and about 180-something, 186 maybe for diesel. It's getting up there, isn't it?
Yeah, it's crazy.
The problem is there's no incentive for government to actually regulate this situation because the government's taking over half of the revenue. In effect, you know, the taxation and the duty and the VAT on the duty is like 55% of the cost of the fuel.
Yeah,
so there's absolutely no reason for them to really set the Competition and Markets Authority onto the fuel distributors to get them to bring the price down.
No, exactly. And I saw Starmer last week was having a meeting with the the various heads of the energy companies and the fuel companies. He's like, we can't do this on our own. Well, actually, you could do it on your own. You could reduce the price of fuel quite substantially, either by taking the VAT off it or by reducing the amount of fuel duty. But they don't seem to want to do that, as you say. Presumably, they need the money.
Yeah, well, I think, yes. They have sort of borrowed and taxed themselves into a hole. As old Churchill said, you know, trying to tax your way to prosperity is like standing in a bucket and trying to pick it up by the handles. And that's exactly what they're doing.
Yeah. Absolutely right. And as you said, the whole kind of atmosphere of being a driver at the moment is a nightmare. I mean, I go down to Sussex at the weekends, and there's a huge kind of temporary traffic light problem in this country at the moment. Everywhere I go, it's almost as though there's that guy with the truck who's putting them out in front of me just so that he catches everywhere. The A21 has got a temporary traffic light around a place called Hurst Green, which has been there now for best part of about a month. And it's, I don't know if you know the road, but it's where you turn off to go to Etchingham. And they've just produced this entire kind of construction around the T-junction, whereby it's a long, in either direction, it's a 10-15 minute wait to get through the traffic light. And so my sat-nav will send me a different way. But on that way now, the other diversion, they put a temporary traffic light there as well. So it's almost like there's everywhere you go, and it's a plague, and the secondary road is so riddled with potholes that you're literally driving down the middle of it most of the time. And it's a fast road as well, so you're doing like 50 miles an hour driving down the middle of the road. If you see something coming the other way, you're going to take your life in your hands and you move into your right lane, just to make sure that you're not going to hit the guy. But then you've got more than 50% chance of getting into a bloody great hole. And they're deep potholes as well.
Yeah.
I encountered a really good one the other day, a temporary traffic light near me just before a crossing for a train track. So if it let you through at the wrong time, you could potentially end up between two barriers on a train track. So, that was sensible.
Yeah.
And like you say, I think one of the biggest problems with these temporary traffic lights is that from changing from green to red, the timing of it is so long that it's frustratingly ridiculous. And the turnaround of going from green to red should be a lot more a lot quicker than it actually is.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you just end up with congestion.
Yeah, and this is the thing, I was, and there's a couple of farm shops right by this particular, one-way system. So even if you just want to go, I want to go buy some wood at the weekend, and I thought I literally had to go round the houses and come through a whole series of different, back roads in order to avoid sitting in traffic for 15 minutes just to buy some wood. And it's insane. So it must be hurting those businesses as well.
Oh, those businesses will be massive.
Nobody calculates the economic cost of these kind of delays, Mike. That's the problem. Where I live up in the northeast of England, we live just off the major dual carriageway that links the Lake District with Middlesbrough and Stockton-on-Tees, which is the area in which I live. And there's been 14 mile an hour limit average speed cameras and whatnot on what should be a national speed limit dual carriageway for months and months, while they were replacing the central barrier and putting new lighting in, which it didn't even look like it actually needed. But again, huge delays and no sense of urgency to complete the work.
No. Well, I'll see. I mean, I come to work pretty early in the morning, like 5:30 in London, and on any given week, and it's a pretty short journey. I'm taking about 15-20 minute journey, which would be a lot quicker if I could do anything more than about 10 miles an hour, But there's every single week there's a new temporary traffic light put in, and the regular traffic lights as well tend to go really, really quickly from green to red. You talk about the temporaries should be better, but in London, if you're lucky if you get 3 cars through a traffic light before it goes red again, which again causes all manner of ridiculous congestion.
I mean, I used to work in the West End. I used to live in Reading, and I was driving in on the M4. This was before the M4 bus lane and all the other stuff.
Yeah.
And when you came off the motorway proper and you got onto, is it the A4? I think you come onto to head into central London, because I was going right into the West End. And if you hit the traffic lights on green, doing the normal speed limit, you'll get a green light all the way through, right until you're right in the West End, Park Lane, that sort of area.
Yeah.
But since then, they've randomised all of the traffic light sequences, so it ends up with the sort of lottery that you described. That there doesn't seem to be any rhyme or reason to the traffic light phasing, and that causes, of course, huge congestion, huge delays, unnecessary emissions. And of course, then you add in the bus lane and all the other stuff that's gone with it. And, the cycle lanes, of course, as well now, which weren't there when I was doing it. And it's just utter chaos, and it doesn't help the economy to function. And the cyclists don't use the damn lanes anyway.
No. Well, certainly in London, the cycle lanes are busy in the mornings for about an hour, busy in the evenings for about an hour, but the rest of the time there's nobody in them. So they've got to come up with a slightly more flexible way of doing it seems to me. Because now the space in which you can drive a car as an ordinary member of the population is tiny, and everybody else has got more space than you. And like buses are driving around empty, then they shut the bus lane and then suddenly you can't go anywhere. I mean, it's just mad, completely mad.
Yeah,
it is. What's the situation with potholes like around there, Mike?
It's actually in London. It's not too bad pothole wise, but as I said, Sussex is a nightmare. Because they're very deep potholes. I mean, some of them are kind of like that deep. And so that big around. The kind that will absolutely screw your tyres and or your axle if you happen to go into one. And also, if you're driving at night, you can't see them. I mean, I'm talking about driving during the day when it's hard enough to avoid them. But if you're driving at night on a road that you're not familiar with, you don't see them,
We recently put a piece of PR out because one of the issues that we've had this winter, because it's been so wet and rainy, a lot of these potholes are masked by puddles. So that's been an additional problem for drivers. And also the weather conditions have exacerbated the state of these potholes anyway. And it just feels like it's another way of effectively forcing drivers off the road by not repairing these things.
Well,
of course, obviously they say they haven't got money to repair the potholes, and we speak to Mr. Pothole. I know you've had him on your show before.
Yes, we have.
Who does great work, and he's talking about there being a backlog of something like 18 billion quid. But I don't know where they've got the money to reconstruct the roads then and to build roundabouts, and as you say, to put cycle lanes in and bus lanes, and maybe they could redirect some of the money they spend on all that and the temporary traffic lights to fixing the potholes. Absolutely.
And given when you actually do the sums and work out how much the government's taking one way or another in both direct and indirect taxation from road users. It's over £1 billion a week.
Yeah.
And yet the money that's going into strategic roads is probably 6-7 billion maybe. It's only a tiny fraction of the revenue that's raised.
Yeah.
And we think it should be much more equitable than that.
Right. And is it all very much centralised in terms of who gets what, or is it, down to local authorities as well in various different areas?
Well, the Highways Agency is supposed to deal with strategic roads, so they have a RIS, Roads Investment Strategy documents at intervals, but of course that's controlled by central government. But local councils, it seems a bit more hit and miss, and certainly the backlog is about 18.6 billion, I think it is, that Mr. Pothole describes it as.
Yeah.
And yet, we've got this huge amount of money going into the Exchequer every year, but all the Exchequer seems to want to do is to screw us for more money and not put any more money back into roads. I mean, sometimes we maybe 6 or 7 billion is going into strategic roads, and 20 billion of that pot is going into railways. Well, railways are important, but they only take a tiny fraction of the number of passengers that the country's moving around. Yeah. So there should be a balancing mechanism.
That's if you're lucky enough to be able to get a train. I mean, one of my sons was in Brighton at the weekend, and so his mother and my other son wanted to go and see him. There's no train. Because, of course, Easter weekend, one of the busiest weekends where people like to travel, it's all bus replacement services. You couldn't actually get there by train. Yeah. So naturally, the roads are more congested. You have to drive because there's no other way of getting there. There's no rural bus network to speak of, despite the fact that they tell us in government, the buses are cheaper now. We put a limit on them. Well, one, they're not cheaper, and two, there's not very many of them.
No, they're so infrequent. And it's like you said as well, Mike, the number of times that you'll be stuck in traffic and a bus will go past you with maybe one passenger on it. Yeah. I mean, it's a damn big limousine at the end of the day.
Right. And that's the other thing. I mean, all of these electric buses that we've got now must be putting a strain on the roads. I mean, one of my theories is that one of the reasons potholes are a lot worse is because of the fact that vehicles are a lot heavier. Electric cars, electric buses, electric vans, they must be ruining the roads, mustn't they?
It's certainly a significant factor. Absolutely.
I think another factor is that cost cutting's got into the actual road repair system itself, really, Mike, and the quality of the resurfacing work is not actually up to the standard of that we need to actually see the roads not deteriorate quickly. Because I mentioned where I live is near this major dual carriageway, and it must have been resurfaced probably 3 or 4 times in the 20 odd years that we've been living here. But they've all been in recent years. When we first lived here, the road was free and free of potholes and things for like a decade at a time. But now, within 2 to 3 years, the quality is beginning to tail off, and they're having to do resurfacing. And I think it's done down to a price instead of up to a quality. Yeah.
And do you guys, as the Alliance of British Drivers, do you speak to government ministers? Do they speak to you? Will they actually have a meeting with you?
Well, at one stage they did, but they won't speak to us now, basically, because we believe net zero is crazy.
Right.
It's absolutely lunatic. We've been talking to lots of people about this, like David Turver, Catherine Porter, even people like Tom Nelson in America. And everybody who understands the science even vaguely realizes that this is an insane policy, because even if we are setting an example for the rest of the world, nobody's following it. They're all sitting and wondering why we're sending our industry down the plug hole. And the other thing is, and this really bugs me, they keep talking about the UK producing 1% of carbon dioxide emissions, right? Yeah. Well, it's 1% of man-made carbon dioxide emissions, and man-made emissions are only 3.5% of the total. So we're producing 0.035% of global carbon dioxide emissions. 96.5% of them we can do nothing about because they're natural.
Yeah.
So when is somebody going to wake up and realize, well, this is just stupid?
Well, this is the thing. I mean, there's a story in the Telegraph today saying that actually all of the net zero sort of targets that we've been supposedly hitting for the best part of the last year and a half since Labour have been in, haven't made any difference whatsoever to our consumption of fossil fuels anyway. So it's like
No.
whatever it is they're trying to do is not working.
Well, we're shipping our industry out to China and places like that, and actually their energy policies are less efficient than ours. So that's increasing emissions instead of reducing them, and costing us more money. And we're getting oil from the Norwegians from the same field that we could be drilling from ourselves.
Yeah, I think
unbelievable.
My biggest frustration in all of this is that as a country, if we carry on down this route, all we're doing is making ourselves more vulnerable to people that may not be of our like mind, but also we're just impoverishing ourselves against the world. Where if I can't see America coming on board with the same sort of net zero targets that we've got, I can't see Russia doing it, China, India. So because of that, it's a little bit like, I always liken it to putting like a drop of squash into a pint glass and topping it up with water. It'll make very, very little difference. It'll be, it's still going to taste like water. So the
in effect.
Yeah, at the end of the day, everything that we're trying to do here is just ideology. And we've got a real problem in government at the moment with Mr. Millibrain, who just insists on his way is the only way. He will not listen.
No.
Well, if he doesn't listen soon about drilling in the North Sea, then we're all stuffed.
Yeah, exactly right. Because also just the cost of everything going up is going to be too much for people to bear. And, I saw just the other day, there's a new tax that's been put on. It might have even been there for a couple of years, but there's a new tax that's been put on top of road tax. If you buy a car now that's worth more than 40,000 quid, there's another 500 quid to pay. Or if you get a car which is considered to be high performance, there's another tax of thousands to pay if you buy like a V8 or something like that,
But it's all, as you say, it's all about revenue generation. It's got nothing whatsoever to do with the environment. And road users are just being stigmatized so that the government can make them feel guilty and make them pay more tax.
I don't feel guilty and I don't want to pay any more tax. So where does that leave me?
No. Annoyed, like us, because we've had a look at the signs and we can say, listen, this is nonsense, but nobody's listening.
No.
But the more and more you get people aware of it, and they go and talk to their MP and say, look, if you continue down this route, you won't be getting our vote next time around. It's the only way to put pressure on these guys is to realise that it's going to hit them in the ballots, so to speak.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, they also, I think they kind of know that already, though, because it's almost as though, they're kind of going through the motions for these local elections. But at the end of the day, Labour know that they're never going to get re-elected. They know they're screwed. And I'm not sure any of their politicians, whether they're backbenchers or frontbenchers, know what to do about it. And they're also, like you've said before, they're so ideologically wedded to net zero and to, supposedly saving the planet. I don't know what their thought process is like.
No. But I think probably a bigger threat than Labour remaining in would be Greens getting in. That guy is a lunatic.
Yeah.
Zacko the Wacko.
Yeah. Or Dave, as he's otherwise known.
Dave,
by his real name. I mean, there's a genuine worry that they will win quite a lot of seats in the councils in London. And you can imagine the kind of things they would do if they got into any kind of position of power.
Well, especially with the current mayor.
Yeah.
They'll be racing about hand in hand doing, sort of exotic dancing and stuff while the roads fall to pieces and traffic grinds to a halt.
Well, they've already got two different forms of ULEZ, haven't they? There's talk of possibly having to pay per mile, which I'm sure Sadiq Khan would love to do. I imagine that's not far away.
No.
But I mean, even that's not necessary, Mike. I mean, if you've got a conventional car, then the more you drive, the further you drive, the faster you drive, the bigger the car you drive, larger its engine, the more tax you pay. It's perfectly progressive.
Yeah.
There's no reason why you can't do that at the point of metering electricity into the battery of an electric car.
Yeah.
You don't need pay per mile. You just make sure that the person pays a commensurate rate of tax to an internal combustion engine vehicle when they actually put the electrons into the battery.
Yeah. That would be fair.
It's not rocket science to set that up.
No, but of course, the electric car revolution's kind of over, isn't it? Before it's really had a chance to get going, because people are going, well, if you're going to start charging me for driving a car that I have to, take somewhere to charge, I'm just not interested. And all that's going to happen is people will buy those cheap Chinese imports if they want an electric car, which we all know are very bad for our economy, but very good for China.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. I do wonder if Miliband, Rachel Reeves, and Starmer, got their fully paid up memberships of the Chinese Communist Party cards in their pocket.
Yeah,
That's the time.
It is extraordinary. I was almost liking it to as well, where they came out. I think it was the Department of Defense came out last year and said that they wouldn't allow anybody to park a Chinese electric car anywhere near a Department of Defense facility because they basically are able to sort of hack into everything. And it's like driving around, I call it like driving around a giant iPhone, where you're literally just, tracking everything and everybody. Yes. And so if the Department of Defense say that you can't park there, then surely we shouldn't be allowing them to be driven in the country, should we?
Well, exactly. That is the question. Of course, there is. I'm not saying that there's evidence that electric cars are more prone to going up in smoke than conventional ones. But the problem is when they do, when you get a thermal runaway, there's very little time to actually exit the vehicle, especially if the doors, stay shut as they do on the Tesla model and people can't open the door handles. They release toxic fumes and people die. So they are much more dangerous when they combust than a conventional vehicle. And, there's a big worry for me if one of those goes up in the Channel Tunnel or in St. Bernard Pass or somewhere like that, where there's a lot of vehicles in a confined space, you're going to have a lot of fatalities very quickly.
Yeah. And you can't put the fire out, can you? I mean, is it not true to say that they're already banned from some ferries? Those cars?
Norway, a lot of Norwegian ferry carriers won't take BEVs anymore for that very reason. And there's been a number of large vehicle carriers have gone up in smoke because once one BEV's gone up in smoke, it sets off all the other vehicles, conventional ones as well, and you can't control the fire. You put water on a lithium battery and lithium reacts really violently with water. So even if you stuck the thing underwater, the reactions will still take place.
Right.
Yeah. So they are very dangerous. There's no question about that.
Yeah.
I've actually seen an electric vehicle fire. I was coming back from a job from Bath, I think I'd been in. Anyway, I was on the M6. And for quite some distance, all you could see were these plumes of really thick smoke. And obviously everybody was rubbernecking it, so it had slowed the traffic down anyway. But when you got close to where it was, this vehicle was just being, like Mike said, there was no attempt to put it out. It was just being left to burn out. But I'd never seen flames quite like it. They were a completely different colour, different intensity, everything about it.
They're really dangerous for the firefighters as well, which is why they stayed back. Because if you breathe that stuff in, it can do you serious damage. Outside of it, you need fully contained breathing gear really to avoid being exposed to hydrogen cyanide and all sorts of things. Really nasty chemicals,
So if you guys aren't being listened to by the government or by their ministers, I mean, who is going to listen to you?
Well, the answer is to actually bypass the government and get the electorate aware of what's going on. And the more we do programs like this, Mike, the more people become aware. And then, of course, then they get to the point where the policies they're trying to push water uphill because the electorate just isn't buying it anymore. And then that's when they'll drop them, when they realise it's an electoral liability, and they're not. Then there'll be a backlash from within in the party as well as from outside.
Yeah. And what about professional drivers, people driving lorries and vans and things like that? What are they saying?
The haulage, they call themselves Logistics UK and the Freight Transport Association now, I think they've gone through various iterations, but most of them are, how can I put it? They are ideologically aligned with the government.
Are they?
Yes, I think so. At the top, without being actually aware of the science, and people like Howard Cox, the guy who runs Fair Fuel UK, he started off actually helping the Freight Transport Association, and there was another one which has changed its name, as I say, to Logistics UK, and they were actually sponsoring him because he was going to government and saying, look, all the money you put on road tax actually feeds through, if it's a commercial vehicle, through to customer prices and actually drives the economy down. So there's a sweet spot beyond which you shouldn't go, because otherwise you're actually causing the economy to contract instead of expand. But Nowadays they've stopped supporting Howard, and they just, whoever's at the top sitting waiting for his gong in supporting government's net zero policies, but practically the road haulage industry, the individual members will come to Howard and say, look, we'll still support you because we know all of this is nonsense, and we need to get back to a transport policy that's sane. Yeah, right. So he has a lot of grassroots industry support, but not from the very top.
And is there any place in Europe that is somewhere that we could be more like, or is it just as bad there?
I think it's pretty bad right across Europe. Although I think the lights seem to be coming on up here in Germany now. That they've realised that an Energiewende, as it was called, the energy policy, all of the green stuff that we've had thrust down our throats for the last 30 years, that actually it's destroying the German economy, and they're suffering exactly the same industry contraction. Got huge companies like BASF moving all of their equipment to China because it's cheaper to produce there. So in effect, they're going down, or have gone down, the same offshoring route, and as a result, their GDP and their economy's gone down the pan as well. So I think the Germans, the electorate's really waking up now, and again, they're going to have the same problem, that the electorate is going to be totally misaligned with what the government thinks it's trying to do, which may be well meant, but the result is the destruction of your own domestic economy, and it's just got to stop.
Yeah.
So well, I think in Europe there is an awakening, a dawning realization now that if we continue down this route, we will all be back in sackcloth and ashes and living in caves.
I mean, it does seem like they're on a race to kind of zero, not net zero, just zero. Literally nothing. You will have nothing. You won't be able to afford to go anywhere or do anything.
I call it policy, ban anything near anyone, near anywhere. It is bananas. It really is.
I think the big issue as well is that all these virtuous people who claim they're not road users aren't seeing the bigger picture, because we're all road users whether or not we use the roads, because we all rely on goods and services being transported from one end of the country, or even beyond that, from one continent to this to the country, and people just aren't. I don't think they're going to realise just how stupid they've been until something major happens. And potentially with what's going on with the fuel situation in the Middle East, with the tankers not being able to get through Hormuz, then we could be staring at something that they've been trying to do for in a number of ways for a number of years now. We could have something that has created itself as an offshoot of Trump's war with Iran.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, it's a bit like during lockdown when people were like, "Oh, it's great working from home," but the roads, are not as clear as they should be. And then you go, because you keep ordering something that has to be delivered in a truck, and they don't sort of put two and two together. One of the reasons why we've got so many congested roads in this country is because there's about 35,000 trucks driving around at any time with your Amazon delivery in it.
My stepdaughter seems about 3 things a day, so they're always here.
She's keeping Amazon in business.
Yeah, I know. It's just kind of insane in a way, because they've sort of reconstructed society in such a way that there's more people now working from home, but they're now getting more stuff delivered. So the idea that you're somehow reducing congestion in the country is completely wrong. And also, you're closing down shopping areas where nobody now wants to go because you can't park there and there's no shops to go to anyway. And the result is more stuff on the road, and yet the roads are collapsing and they're not doing anything about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And to come back to the point you just made, Mike, in the case of many town and city centres, that's exactly what's happening. They're turning into sort of urban deserts almost, because nobody wants to go in. There's a punitive parking regime if you can even find a parking space. And as a result, local businesses in lots of towns and cities are dying because they've got no custom. And then there's, of course, the build outs and the pavement cafe kind of ideas that Sadiq Khan's keen on, that basically strangle even, urban roads outside town centres and just stop people going about their normal lawful business.
Well, this is it. I mean, you guys, I'm sure, travel around the country, and places like Oxford, Bristol, Newcastle, I'm told, is bad now. You just can't get in. Glasgow apparently is awful. Edinburgh has always been bad. You just can't get to certain parts of the city. Manchester, for example, where they've got these bus gates and things. You don't even know where you're supposed to drive. It's almost as though they've created this kind of puzzle for anyone who's actually in a car.
Exactly.
See, and I mean, I talk about this all the time, that in any given week, because I drive pretty much every day, I can't remember the last time I had a month where I didn't get some kind of penalty for something, you know?
Yeah. And you're right. And often the signage is very misleading and doesn't always warn you that you're entering one of these zones. And the only way you find out is when you get the ticket through your post.
Well, I got one in Southwark, which was just around the back of London Bridge. I still don't know what it was for to this day. You know, it was supposedly a zone that I wasn't supposed to be parked in, but I wasn't parked. I was actually driving. And the picture of the car was the car moving. You know, it wasn't parked, and yet it was supposedly it was a parking violation. And I tried to appeal it, didn't get anywhere. So in the end, you just pay it, you know.
Yeah, I had two brilliant ones recently. I mean, I live not too far from Stoke, and I had to go and pick somebody up from Stoke train station, and I didn't realise that they'd made it into like a bus gate.
Yeah.
And when it's somewhere that's familiar to you, you're not looking at signs in the same way as when it's somewhere that you don't go to. So I was completely oblivious to the fact that they'd labelled the fact that it was a bus gate. Drove through it. Saw a flash of a camera, thought, hey, what was that about? Sure enough, a few days later, £35 now, or you can pay £70 if it goes to court or whatever. Okay, whatever. And then the other one, which was absolutely ludicrous, was at the Wrekin in Shropshire. I was meeting a client halfway up the Wrekin. Great, and went to the car park at the base of the Wrekin, and it was one of these ones where you got to pay using your mobile phone. You needed the app.
Yeah.
There was no signal around there to get the app. So what are you supposed to do?
Right.
So I had to go drive off and go and park in a country lane.
Yeah.
None of these things are well thought out.
No, they're not. Somebody in an office somewhere who doesn't have a car just goes, oh yeah, well let's do this. And I discovered I got done twice in the same week, just around where I live, because what I didn't know was they turned one of the roads into a no-go area during certain hours, like because there was a school there, all right?
Yeah.
And apparently, so between something like 9 and 9:45 and 3 and 3:45, if you drive down the road, you get a fine. And of course, because I didn't know, I got done twice in the same week because it was on the way to, and it was the only reason I was using that road was because the two other roads, which I could make me access had temporary traffic lights. I think one of them was shut, the other one had temporary traffic lights, so I'll go this way. And again, I appealed it. I said I couldn't see the sign. The sign was on a different, like what appeared to be on the side of a different road, and they didn't care. And that was 160 or 80, you know, twice.
Yeah, it really is. The problem, and it applies to these sort of traffic offences, applies to speeding offences. It's nobody policing the enforcers,
right?
And they're just taking advantage. And really, we need, you know, a decent parking and traffic authority that has teeth. And when they find blatant abuses like that, then they actually fine the people who are administering the regime. And I believe the same thing should be done with speed cameras, because the thing that's happened since speed cameras came in, and it was what really worried me when I formed the Association of British Drivers, the Alliance of British Drivers as it is now, is I thought this is just ripe and open for abuse, because if you keep driving down the speed limits to the point where nobody obeys them, you'll make a shed load of money. And that's exactly what's happened. And they don't improve road safety. That's the worst part. Neither the cameras nor the speed awareness courses actually improve road safety. If you do a regression comparing the offences and the casualties, well, you would expect the more traffic enforcement and the more speed awareness courses, the offences would come down. But the relationship's the other way around. The more offences and the more speed awareness courses, there's a slight upward trend in casualties. So they're not actually hitting the right spot. They're doing completely the wrong thing.
Well, one of the things we've got now here in London is a sort of outbreak of these massively high cameras, which are the ones that look inside your car to see what you're doing effectively. And nobody really knows whether they also measure speed or whether they measure anything else. But we're told there's a new sort of generation of cameras that are being trialled in West London, sort of suburban places like Hounslow and Barnes and Hammersmith and that way. And these are apparently very much more high-tech cameras that Sadiq Khan's bought at great expense. which can do all sorts of things and see you doing all kinds of things you shouldn't be doing. I'm not even sure how they work, but apparently they're not going to flash anymore at you, and they don't require anybody to put a sign up saying it's there.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, this is departing a long way. When Paul Manning, we're talking over 30 years ago now, he was the chief of ACPO, said that they were going to make speeding as socially unacceptable as drink driving. Well, that's all right as long as the speed limit regime is fair and just. But that's not the case anymore now. Right. Many places, especially in Wales, with these 20 mile an hour limits, not just in the towns, but going out into open countryside, totally unrealistic. And of course, people don't obey them, but ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. And that's what it's all about. It's not about road safety anymore. And we need, as I said, an overarching body to take control of this and to stop the abuses that are going on every day, everywhere across the country.
Yeah. I think also it's widely believed by the people that are getting these fines that the money's going into the coffers to help improve motoring, helping to improve roads, etc. It's not. It's just going into the general pot of taxation.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. And to buy more high-tech equipment to oppress road users even more.
Yeah, or pay for more traffic wardens, or pay for more parking wardens, or pay for more leading PR people, or something like, it's just nonsensical.
Yeah, and again, no cost-benefit analysis. What is the cost to the economy of all this slowing down of traffic? And it's huge. You work out even average speed drop by 1 mile per hour. I think the cost, I've worked out back of an envelope, it's over £1 billion a week, a year, for every mile an hour reduction in average speed. Well, you don't need to, reduce particularly motorway speeds very much to cause a huge economic cost. And nobody tallies that up against the so-called benefits.
Well, my favourite is the 60 mile an hour zone for clean air, which is on the M4 as you drive past Heathrow, where they're dumping literally, aviation fuel all over the place when they have to come back into land, and it's a pretty, bad quality air because it's an airport. But the road is 60 miles an hour. Yeah,
but it doesn't make any difference to the emissions when you. And there's a Transport for London document on this, Mike, where it's called Designing an Emissions Test for London or something, but it's packed at the back with graphs, and all the graphs show that basically we've got to the point with the technology of modern vehicles that it's pretty much a flat line, very low emissions, right out well beyond the motorway speed limit. But where the emissions really ramp up is below 30 miles an hour. And if you start slowing traffic below 30 miles an hour, the emissions just virtually go up almost vertically. So all of this traffic slowing is actually making air quality worse. And at motorway speeds, it makes very little difference whether you're doing 50 miles an hour, 70 miles an hour, 85 miles an hour, whatever. It's a flat line because the engines are designed to work efficiently. But when there is standing, what's the traffic speed in London now? 7-8 miles an hour.
I think the average is around about 8.
Yeah, really? Well, the emissions are dreadful then because you're well below where the engines are designed to run efficiently, and you're in a higher gear, so you're making more emissions anyway.
I know, it's insane. It's totally insane. But, I don't see any sign of it changing, unfortunately.
No. Yeah. I mean, we've also got, in addition to the impact on the road user, is the lunacy of HS2.
Oh,
yeah. That just seems to be a bottomless pit of money being wasted. And that latest thing that they came out with, which was, we might have to run the trains a bit slower.
Yes.
So the whole point of doing it in the first place is negated.
Right.
If
you can't even call it HS2, can you, anymore?
No. If they'd have paid me £1 million at the start, Mike, I'd have told them just to catch the train that's half an hour earlier. There you go. Thank you very much. I'll put that in the bank. I'll just say,
exactly, and improve the quality of the existing line. Don't build another one, which is going to be a white elephant, which it's proved to be.
Yeah, totally mad, completely mad. But this is no joined up thinking. And I mean, the last lot, the Tories weren't really any better. In fact, they were just as bad.
Well, wasn't it George Galloway who basically said that the problem is like it's a green blob now, and they're all multiple cheeks of the same bottom.
Yes, they are.
I think he described it as
exactly right. Exactly right. And I mean, I don't know what you do about it because, unfortunately, you get more tax. You just pay it because you don't want to be in trouble with the tax man. But I don't know if we could have a genuine kind of, we're not going to pay any tax this month, or we're just not going to give you any tax. I don't know if we could ever get away with that.
No, well, maybe we could just say, when is it you have to work over half the year before you actually start earning any money because of the amount of tax they take. Yeah. So maybe we should say, well, we're not going to work for the first 7 months of the year because we don't get any of it. Right. And we'll start working for the last 5 months.
That might work. Yeah,
that would certainly cause some problems, wouldn't it?
Go on, Brian. Go for Parliament.
Yeah, it's not great, is it?
I mean, coming back to net zero for a minute, there was some stuff coming out in the last few days that Miliband might be forced into a retreat on North Sea drilling and on fracking. I mean, really, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to work out that we need a pluralist energy policy, not one that's based on renewables, because we've seen and people like Catherine Porter have told us that, the reason that the Iberian grid fell over was because they were totally reliant on renewables for generation, and then the weather changed very quickly, as weather is wont to do, and the grid couldn't cope because they didn't have enough spinning resistance, enough conventional generation to stop it from falling over. But that's exactly the position we're in now. We've got far too much renewables, far more than we'll ever need. And we're actually paying the producers to not produce when they're producing too much energy from wind, and then they're getting subsidies as on top of that to actually make it economic. So, what is the point? It's like a heads I win, tails you lose thing.
Well, whatever that's the point, isn't it?
They're quids in.
Yeah, that's the point. I mean, if it was such a successful and efficient system, it wouldn't need to be subsidised, but it does need to be subsidised because it doesn't pay. It's not actually it's not a viable business, and if it's not a viable business, we shouldn't be paying for it.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's the same with EVs. Exactly the same with EVs.
Yeah. I mean, I think they're great, and people like Barry Crampton, who does some very good YouTube stuff. He has a small electric car he uses for running backwards and forwards in town.
Yeah.
But he says, if I want to do a long journey, so I'm not going to take this. I'm going to take a reliable petrol or diesel to do any long-range journeys. So by all means, people who like electric cars and only doing short journeys and they can charge at home and when they get to work, fine. But outside of that, they're just not reliable enough. They're charging difficulties because you can't always find a charger that works. And then the range anxiety thing. Just don't force technology onto people that doesn't work for them.
Well, again, if it worked and it was viable, then people would buy it. If you've got a good product that people can afford and that they want, they're going to buy it. But if it's too expensive, or it needs to be subsidised in some way, or you need to be given an incentive to buy it, which is now going to wear off, of course, it's clearly not economically, worth doing.
Nobody's forced people to adopt internal combustion engine vehicles over horses and carts. There are no mandates saying, you will have 20% less horses to transport things around next year than the previous year. It was just that the superior technology won the sort of evolution race, and that's the same thing as we should be doing with vehicle technology and transport.
Yeah, absolutely right. I mean, I don't know. I mean, next they're going to bring in these flying taxis, aren't they? Flying cars. I don't know how far away that is, but I mean, you can just imagine how much money they're going to make out of that.
They need to start
doing. They'll not be electric. They'll not be electric. They'll not be electric because when you start working out what the batteries, if you try to make an electric vehicle that flies for any distance, the batteries are going to be enormous. That makes it impractical. You don't sort of do 90 mile an hour hops or something, 90-mile hops or things like that.
Yeah.
It's not practical.
No, hopeless. Absolutely hopeless. Oh well.
Yeah. So did you see that story that went viral the other day, Mike, about that woman who was supposedly filling up carrier bags at Sainsbury's?
I did see that. I did.
I think that's going to be an April Fool's.
Was it an April Fool?
I don't know. I had a good look at it, and I thought at first I thought surely this is going to be AI. And I don't think it is AI. I think you can check that. And then somebody said to me, "Oh, that's an old picture from the last time there was a fuel shortage." It's an old video. So I think it's a real video. I mean, I find it hard to believe, but yeah, I think it is. People are very stupid. You can't underestimate people's stupidity.
No, you can't.
That's what worries me about the idea. They keep saying, "Oh, hydrogen's the answer." Well,
yeah, right.
Hindenburg is one word.
Yeah.
And as you say, you cannot account for the stupidity of people. And with really reactive, dangerous stuff like hydrogen, you're just asking for a big problem.
Yeah,
I think though, if nothing else, it highlights the level of fear that there is in the public at the moment of running out of petrol or diesel in your car.
Yeah, absolutely.
I went along to my local Tesco the other day, and there was 6 or 7 of them milling around in the where you go to pay for your fuel with their high vises on, and unusually there was there was some gaps at the petrol pumps. I'm filling up. I went in there and said, have you got a lot of fuel then? Because this is around the time when all the pumps are shutting. They said, funnily enough, the gentleman behind you, he'll be the last one today. We're shutting. So I just about managed to get some in time. Right. But it is weighing heavily on the minds of your everyday folk.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, as we've highlighted throughout this whole conversation, is we've got very much a silent majority in this country who don't speak up and say what's bugging them. Unfortunately, the people that do tend to go to rallies and ludicrous marches, particularly in the capital, are your radicals that want to make a point. Then they're not necessarily the majority point of view of the country.
Exactly. No, exactly right.
Of course, the other thing that's happening that the people probably don't realise is that with the Middle East situation, the Eastern Asian countries, India and Singapore, all those sort of places, they are actually bidding for tankers that are already in transit that were supposed to be coming to Europe and to the UK. And if you can gazump other buyers who've provisionally bought the cargo. If you offer a higher bid, the marine operator will redirect the ship to somewhere else.
Right.
And of course, in India and Asia and places that they don't care about net zero. They just want the usable material to produce energy to run their economy.
Right.
And so because a lot of it comes through the Strait of Hormuz, they're basically trying to repossess it and get it so that they can get a hold of it, and we are sitting and watching while our pumps run dry.
Yeah,
just crazy.
I know. It is crazy, absolutely mad. I've seen people queuing for petrol as well. It's only going to get worse, I imagine.
Yeah. Well, they're talking about fuel rationing. They're talking about reducing speed limits to try and make petrol last a bit longer. It's all playing into the hands of the ideology of getting the motorist off the road.
Yeah, very much so. But again, if you keep people up to date with what's going on and why it's happening, then they become less susceptible to the propaganda and more likely to kick back against it, which is basically what we need.
Yeah.
We need people to actually say, no, we're not having this. And if you persist with it, you will not be in government again in our lifetime, or hopefully anybody else's. And we'll get somebody in who is sensible. And ultimately, the sane, rational approach has to take over, because you can't have this sort of Brothers Grimm fairy story, dark fairy story sort of plot to run your economy.
No, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Anyway,
right. Well, we're fastly approaching the hour.
Ground here, Mike. Really appreciate you coming on.
Not at all.
Yeah, thank you.
And maybe we can do a review of the situation in 6 months' time and and see.
We'll get you guys on my show as well, because there's plenty to talk about, and there's going to be loads of fuel related, car related stories, I'm sure, in the next month or so.
Yeah.
So just one point that I didn't get in. The other thing that people don't realise about this net zero craziness is that we have about 6,000 products derived from oil drilling and oil recovery, and a lot of them are medical products. All our antibiotics are downstream products from oil extraction, and all the medical plastics and all the plastics that we all rely on every day in our houses. If we stop drilling for oil, all of those will disappear. And like I said, then you're back to skins, sackcloth, ashes, and caves.
Exactly, and nothing sterilised. Because I remember somebody saying that during COVID, it'd be nice if we could do away with all the plastic that we use. And people in the medical business would go, well, no, because you need it as a one-use only, sterile. Exactly. So no, you can't just use it. You can't make it out of wood, or make it out of bloody paper. It needs to be made out of plastic. So therefore you need petroleum for it.
People just don't seem to realise that's the case. We are totally reliant on hydrocarbons.
Yeah.
Well, before we go, Mike, where can people catch up with your show and your?
Well, we're on YouTube. Check it out, the Mike Graham Show. We've got Substack, MikeGrahamShow.com, and we're starting a new channel as well called UK Live, which is also on UK Live Online, which is where we're going to be putting some other things as well. So, universally available. Well, sometime in the next few weeks, we hope. We're still kind of finalising bits and bobs, but sometime soon.
Yeah. I look forward to seeing that.
Cool.
Brilliant.
Yeah, likewise, Mike. Thanks very much.
Nice to meet you guys. Good to see you.
See you.